the top 1% in this country pay 10% of all income tax. The top 10% pay 50% of all income tax, and the top 25% pay 75% of all income tax. By the way, Spain is not an economy that we want to emulate because they're all just lying around having siestas all the time. Welcome to another episode of the Division Bell podcast. This week we're talking President Macron, migrants, reform, Rishi Sunak and wealth taxes. Lizzie's away this week, so I'm joined by Mikey Smith of The Mirror.
Hello.
My name's Christian and this is the Division Bell. Should we start with the Macron state visit?
Let's.
How do you think it's gone? Out of 10?
Relatively smoothly. I mean, you know, he had to sit through an interminably boring speech by the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, who went on for a very long time about rugby league, one of our apparently shared values. And
it's not a value, Lindsay, it's a sport.
It's a sport, yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's going all right. It's a state visit. No one's thrown anything at anyone. I mean, I'm not sure anyone's going to get what they wanted really out of it, but, you know, it's progress.
No, I suppose the metric of whether it was a success or not was always going to be on this migrant deal, and we're recording this a few hours before the big press conference where we find out details, but it seems like it's not exactly what Keir Starmer was hoping for, or did they fail to pitch roll? I mean, we hear that they're going to be returning 50 migrants a week. We get about 700 a week, so the ratio is not 1 in, 1 out. It's more like 17 in, 1 out, which is not great, and I don't think provides much of a deterrent.
Well, I mean, two things on that. I mean, this Labour government failing to pitch roll, you shock me. Two things. One, it's a pilot scheme. And should be, I mean, it hasn't been like, they haven't done the official communications on it yet. So hopefully they will be saying pilot scheme as loud as they can, as often as they can, because it starts with the 50 a week. And then the idea is if that goes well, it increases from there, which is a bonus. The second thing is 50 a week is more than the Rwanda scheme ever managed to get out. And it's going to be starting, end of next month. So it's going to be pretty quick that Labour has managed to deport more boat migrants than Rishi Sunak ever did.
My problem with it is I actually think there's no point in a pilot scheme. I think 1 in, 1 out only works if it is 1 in, 1 out. And if the pull factors are going to be so great that a potential 50 return for every 750, it's not going to reduce the numbers. So by what metric are the French government and the British government going to declare whether this pilot scheme is a success? Because I don't see it dropping numbers. In fact, I'd still argue, even though you're right, if it ran for a single week and we sent 50 back, we'd have sent more back to France than we did to Rwanda. I would still suppose that Rwanda, despite its failure to deport anyone involuntarily, I would think would still be more of a deterrent than the French policy.
I mean, it wasn't. It didn't.
Well, I think okay. If it wasn't a deterrent, why are migrant crossings so much higher this year than they were under the last year of Rishi Sunak's government?
Because the weather's been nicer, for one. I mean, it's just a fact. It's not the end point that anyone wants, but also it's the first time we've managed to convince the French to let us do this. So, I mean, baby steps, but, you know, baby steps are not nothing. And also, if the Rwanda scheme had still been in place, we wouldn't have got this. That would have been a deal breaker.
Admittedly, I'd rather be sent to Rwanda than France, so it would be a deterrent for me, personally.
I quite like France.
The Bayer Tapestry is coming home, very much our own Elgin marbles.
On loan.
On loan, for now.
What a stitch up. No. I mean, great, lovely, nice bit of entente there.
But it's not. No, but it's not because this was agreed. But this was announced by Theresa May in 2018, right? This is and then there were all sorts of faffing about with renovations of the Bayer Museum and the British Museum, and it was meant to be coming over in 2027 anyway. I think now it's coming over in 2026. So Starmer has reaffirmed something Theresa May announced,
but
it's not
actually get over the line. Again, not in another. I mean, I don't come here to defend the Labour government and everything that it does, but that it's. I do think it's slightly unfair to say that things that Keir Starmer does and actually manages to get over the line are had been in process under the Tories for like years and years and years, when they just never managed to do it.
Starmer's he's like a striker who loiters by the goal and just sort of taps it in. I'd say he's offside every time. Whether it's trade deals in the US, India, you've got the Tories in the back doing all the midfielding and the defending, getting it to the front, and then Starmer just taps it in and claims all the credit.
So as well as the migrant crossing stuff, there was another agreement that came out last night on defence. So Britain and France have agreed to buy more Storm Shadow missiles. The reading between the lines is because we've given all of ours to Ukraine. But yes, we're buying more Storm Shadow missiles with France, or we've both agreed to buy more. And there was another announcement that was a little vague, but about the nuclear deterrent. So France and Britain's nuclear deterrent will continue to be independent, but there will be an expectation that we're going to back each other up. If they're the wording was particularly weird. It was something like a horrific or an extreme attack on one or the other. Then the other would be expected to coordinate. There will be coordination between the two. And you might think that, this is all pretty much covered by NATO. But I think it was very much a message to the world that, if Putin keeps messing, then, we are all united. Even if Trump's not got back, then France does, sort of thing.
It was sort of like a nuclear attack on one is a nuclear attack on both.
Exactly.
Sort of thing. So it's a good threat. I mean, my hopes got raised when I heard the words France, Britain, and nuclear war in the same sentence. My view of the French is we're not friends, we're brothers. We don't like each other. We've had huge rows. We kick each other's shins under the table when our parents aren't watching. But at the end of the day, we will have each other's backs.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean we have to get on. On the other side of the ledger from Keir Starmer and Macron's chummy pro-European loving, we had Reform UK, which they're not the sort of busiest time, but it's been a bigger week for them in terms of news. Half of it good, half of it bad. We had two defections. We had David Jones, a former Welsh secretary, and we had Sir Jake Berry, a former Tory party chairman. I would say that they are two bits of good news for Reform. They've gone quite a while without a defection. Both of them seem to speak about different parts of what Reform's trying to do, the coalition they're trying to put together. Strong Brexiteer with David Jones, most importantly actually Welsh, where obviously they're looking for big gains in Wales at the Senate election next year, and Sir Jake Berry, who is a bit more of that sort of red wall focused, levelling up, Boris supporting type MP. I think those are two very impressive names for Reform to have won over.
I mean, you missed out the third recent defection, Anne-Marie Morris, who was, as you'll remember, got into a bit of trouble with when she was a Tory MP for making racist remarks in meetings. I mean, we could say it's good news for Nigel. It's bad news for Kemi, is what it is. The defections from the Tories to anyone, seem like rats leaving a sinking ship. So that's never a good look. Whether it's good news for Nigel depends whether you think it's a good look for them to be hoovering up lots of failed Tory MPs. I mean, Jake Berry, I'm sure is a lovely man, but his entire political personality is being Boris Johnson's best mate in politics, and then backing Liz Truss, and then backing Tom Tugendhat. So he's not had the best political judgment over the years,
and voted Remain,
and I didn't know that. But he's not the biggest beast they could have brought over, and he lost his seat. If you're a voter looking for a reason to vote Reform instead of the Tories, hoovering up a bunch of failed Tories is probably not that good a look.
I do think Nigel needs to balance these out. I think he could really do with some more Red Wall Labour defections. I was going to say Lib Dem defections, but I don't think that's going to happen unless Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana decide to join in. But yeah, I think he would also, if we are going to see sitting MP defections, my gut is that he would save them for Parliament, the middle of parliamentary recess when there's absolutely nothing else to write about, because then it will get a week's worth of news coverage. We had the two defections, David Jones and Jake Berry, but we also had two losses. James McMurdoch said he's going to sit as an independent MP for the rest of this Parliament, and Sarah Pochin had a caseworker who was sacked after she was arrested for various things at a Pride march. By the way, I do observe that means they've had 2 out, 2 in, which is more close to what Keir Starmer wanted with the French than he's managed to achieve.
Nigel Farage always used to be really, really vocal when people resigned the whip from a party, that they should stand down and have a by-election. I wonder why he hasn't done that.
I think Reform would win if James McMurdoch resigned as an MP.
He only won by 95 votes.
I think they'd win by bigger.
Okay.
That would be I'd put money on it. Much like Jake Berry, another blast from the past name emerged this week, a little-known MP called Rishi Sunak, who, you would be more fair in sort of forgetting was an MP.
Yeah.
I observed that he's had 3 big wins this week.
Yes.
He became an advisor at Goldman Sachs, which I think that's a very savvy appointment on Goldman Sachs' part. He secured the dualling of the A66, big win, and this Labour government finally became less popular. Voters say that they are less favourable towards this government now than they were towards Rishi Sunak's government at the time that he was ousted, which, given it's only been a year, is a genuinely impressive achievement. Certainly a lot of people were taking it as read that Rishi Sunak, the moment he lost the election, would resign his seat, run away to California, make tens of millions of pounds a year with his wife. And actually, I think it's commendable that he's remained in Parliament. He's asking questions about roads and accessible toilets and wildlife. And I think even you, compared to a lot of other recent prime ministers going back for the last 20 years, would say that's a more commendable path than other comparisons we could make.
Well, I mean, he hasn't got his green card anymore, so he probably would have struggled to go back immediately. Most prime ministers of late have gone straight onto the after-dinner speaking circuit and earned lots of money. Theresa May did that. Boris Johnson did that a bit and then wrote a book, and now it's just sort of looming.
He's waiting for a comeback.
Liz Truss even has managed to find people who'll pay her.
Not a huge
amount, but she is, again,
She also wrote a book.
She did also.
It didn't sell well.
Did you read it?
No, and actually she asked me over lunch whether I'd read it, and I said no, and she started talking about wanting to carve North Yorkshire away from Great Britain.
Well, Liz, I did read it. He hasn't gone straight for the speaking circuit, which is probably wise. Never been the best public speaker. Not one for the jokes. I can't see him, being a big hit on the circuit. So, he's gone to what he knows.
What do you make of Goldman Sachs?
He used to work for Goldman Sachs. He had gone back as an advisor. Is it surprising that a Tory MP would take a second job? No. not super surprising. I think what's interesting about it is that he is donating his salary to charity.
Very decent man.
Very decent man. What makes it more interesting is he's donating it to his own charity, the Richmond Foundation. Is that it?
Yes,
something like that. I think it's very laudable. The foundation's going to be looking at numeracy and literacy. Good things to look at. I have an unpopular opinion, which is that our tax system and our charity system are set up to allow people, because obviously if you donate your salary to charity, then you get fairly hefty tax relief on that, especially if it's your own charity. So it'll still be paying national insurance, but aside from that, the system is set up to allow the super wealthy to effectively opt out of society by deciding, I don't want my money spent on welfare or building social housing or giving people a decent wage who work for the public sector, things like that. I would much rather it be spent on my particular interests and likes. So I will set up my own charity and give all my salary to that, and avoid paying tax on it, so it doesn't have to go to the things that I don't like. And normal people can't do that. Normal people have to just pay the tax and be quiet about it being spent on, wars.
I quite like charity.
I like charity. Love charity.
Love charity. Prefer charity over taxes.
I would rather we didn't need charity.
I would rather we didn't need the public sector. He'll do AI Tech Bro Summit, though, won't he? Of course he will. Rishi and Elon united once again. I'll defend Rishi, but I won't defend Boris, because I got this thing, right? Boris, I know Boris's right-hand guy. In fact, we both know Boris is. He's a member of the House, Lord Council.
Yes.
Right? I may as well say his name. He's not a private individual.
No.
And I wanted to get Boris's book signed for my dad for Christmas. He'd recovered from cancer. He's a big supporter of Boris. I thought, brilliant, nice little handwritten message. So I go down Piccadilly and I go to Waterstones and I try and find an unsigned version of it. There were none because, and I quote, for a member of staff, Boris came in here the other day and signed all of them.
Oh, no.
And they were half price. And then I went, the really posh independent one that's a few doors down, the really old one. I went in there and they had one unsigned copy, which cost me twice as much as a signed one if I bought it from Waterstones. And in true Boris style, it is still in his office and it is July.
And when did he give it to him?
Start of December.
Oh no.
So
Boris.
Maybe next year. There are a group of people that share your frustration, not just with Rishi Sunak, but with the wealthy in general.
Indeed.
And it's dominated the debate this week about whether we are going to have a wealth tax. And I was wondering what you're hearing from deep inside Labour circles about whether we're heading to be one of the only countries in the world, or certainly wealthy countries in the world, with a wealth tax come this budget.
I don't know about come this budget, but it's something that's been that not unserious people have been very noisy about since Labour came into power, just in the background, and it's not being shot down entirely.
No.
I think is the point we're at now. I don't think it's being embraced quite as heartily as some people would like, but it's not being completely laughed at anymore, and you might say rightly so.
I wouldn't say that, and I think actually I think we should get into this, because first of all, the context is that Rachel Reeves has performed, so many U-turns. She's doing pirouettes, and whether that's on welfare or more rightly on winter fuel, she now has this enormous, yet another Kelsopri's black hole that she has to fill at the budget, between something ridiculous like 20 billion and 40 billion quid. We're yet to find out when the OBR spell things out. So she needs to raise taxes. The question is which. And a lot of people, especially on the hard left, are saying that we should just go for a wealth tax amongst a lot of other dubious tax rises. The problem with Labour at the moment is that even if you think a wealth tax can work, which it can't and has been proved not to, you shouldn't be signalling it this far ahead. The point about a wealth tax, you've got a load of really rich people, hypermobile, they can transfer wealth in and out of the country very, very quickly. The one thing you cannot do is signal to them months before that it's coming, because they'll remove all their assets. I mean, we're already losing more millionaires this year than any other country by about a factor of 3. And now people are going to be moving wealth out of the country. And it's going to kill this growth that we're trying to get.
Well, look, I mean, millionaires leaving the country, boo-hoo. I'm sorry, I have very little sympathy for the idea that, we are losing all of the, great talent and things that are creating growth by a few wealthy millionaires leaving the country. I don't think that's. I don't think that's necessarily a problem.
It's a terrible.
It's not a problem on the scale that would cause problems for growth, because the tiny handful of people who are leaving and taking their assets, which they protect and so and guard so heavily, it's a tiny number of people, and in the grand scheme of things, a tiny amount of wealth, because people don't just live here for the tax benefits. People live here because they love this country. And I think for every one millionaire you have leaving the country because they're getting taxed too much, you're going to have 10 who want to stick around and see it because they want this to be a brilliant country. I think many millionaires are decent human beings, and not like horrendously selfish.
If it weren't for the fact all my family and friends lived in this country, I'd be thinking about going abroad, because I'm sick of being taxed at the level I'm being taxed at. So God knows what it's like for someone who's paying hundreds of thousands of pounds a year in tax. And we remember that the top 1% in this country pay 10% of all income tax. The top 10% pay 50% of all income tax, and the top 25% pay 75% of all income tax. So, the projection I saw yesterday, which is something like 15 to 17,000 millionaires are going to be fleeing the country this year. That means we pay more tax. That means every millionaire that leaves, if they're going off with, if they paid, say, £200,000 in income tax last year, that means we've got to stump up. That means higher taxes for us. The reason millionaires leaving is the reason why we're now looking at income tax thresholds being frozen, which means I don't know how close you are, I'm not going to give away how close I am, but another couple of years, we're all going to be 40% tax rate payers by the end of this parliament.
That is an issue that needs resolving for obvious reasons. But I genuinely still think that we're getting very excited about a tax that on paper would affect basically nobody.
Because they'd all avoid it.
Well, no, because it only affects 2% on assets over 10 million.
That's what Lord Kinnock, the former Labour leader, called for this weekend.
And why not?
Because it hasn't worked anywhere.
Well, has anyone tried it?
Yes.
Where?
Yes. The French tried it.
Yeah.
Everyone left. Macron got rid of it about 7 or 8 years ago, and millionaires have returned.
But that was the French.
Spain,
they're angry about everything.
Spain have tried it. They lost record levels of millionaires. By the way, Spain is not an economy that we want to emulate, because they're all just lying around having siestas all the time. Switzerland have one, and it's smaller than what's being proposed, but that's in lieu of an income tax. I think Sweden tried one. They ditched it. It doesn't work. And I'm sorry, but Richard Bergen and Nadia Whittome are not economists, and they don't know what they're talking about.
Neil Kinnock knows what he's talking about.
No, he doesn't. He lost 2 elections.
Only just.
It's only with rose-tinted glasses that we give him any respect.
Rishi Sunak never won an election. You listen to everything he says.
Goldman Sachs is listening to
yeah, well, we'll see.
Thanks very much for watching another episode of The Division Bell. As always, follow us on social media, and please tune in again next week.